science, the religion that is science. We talked about it before, but I want to revisit some of the thoughts that were discussed, and we'll go back to Dr. Lee M. Spetner. Spetner presented a paper in the early 60s and published it in the Journal of Theoretical Biology, a very prestigious scientific review, in which he outlined why it was absolutely impossible for evolution to have taken place on its own mathematically, that there was no chance of evolution occurring on its own without a designer. No one had the chutzpah of questioning Dr. Spetner in the 60s, despite the fact there were tens of thousands of biologists who were avowed evolutionists. The question is, why didn't they do so in the 60s when Spetner was at the height of his career? And the answer is because his formulas were accurate, his mathematics were perfect, and that there was no way that they could actually question him. A couple of years after Lee Spetner published this work, a similar work came out, non-collaborative, by A.M. Hassifer, who was a statistical mathematician, who was a statistical mathematician. He passed away last year, one of the greatest in the world. Came to the same conclusion: given billions of years, it is mathematically impossible for evolution to have ever taken place on its own. There is a Nobel laureate by the name of Ilya who is one of the world's greatest chemists, who says emphatically that there is zero chance for evolution to have taken place on its own. He is a Nobel laureate. This is already not a rabbi from Michigan talking. This is a Nobel laureate, a professor, with the entire list of letters after his name, or before his name. And of course you say, but there's so many others that are different. The question is as follows. Spetner is perhaps the world's greatest expert on the transfer of information into the cell. Grigon is one of the greatest in chemistry in the world, knowing all of the theories that run the biochemical model. Their works are just as valid, and more valid perhaps, than Richard Dawkins and others who champion the evolutionary position. Why is it that their ideas are not even thought about? And so your answer is because there's so much evidence for evolution. What kind of evolutionary evidence do you have? The answer you give me is antibodies. Spetner has answered that. Antibodies in the body, they're made to change. These are chemicals that have to change in order to protect the body. The seed, the genome, the genes, the DNA, which makes each species unique, that's made not to change. If you're a father and mother, you don't want to give birth to a chimpanzee or to a zebra. And so therefore, the DNA doesn't change. That remains the same. In order for there to be changes, there's a huge amount of changes. How big are the changes to get to another species? So the answer is 10 times 10 to the 2,738th power. That's 1 I'm sorry, that's a 1 followed by 7,238 zeros. That's a tremendous amount of odds. The amount of odds to have that happen are staggering. And therefore, look at the facts. Look at what it takes to change something from one species to another. And you can conclude the same way as Lee Spetner, as A.M. Hassifer, as many others who have looked at it honestly and come to the conclusion that without God there is no such thing as evolution, there is no such thing as the development of species, the changes that are necessary to go and deal with the hardships in life. The reason why Dawkins is popular is because if you accept Dawkins, you don't have to go to Sunday school. Now you think, well, that's not a real reason. Dawkins is pursuing truth. So let me tell you something. Professor Hassifer, long before he became a Hasidic Jew, presented his findings to the University of New South Wales. When he presented it to his peers in the university, the head of the biology department started crying. He thought he had insulted the man. So he went over after his talk to ask him if he had insulted him, to ask his forgiveness. So the man says, "You don't understand. My mother forced me to go to Sunday school, and I hated it. And so at age 9, I decided I would believe in Darwin, and so I wouldn't have to go to Sunday school. And now you come along, and I might have to go to Sunday school after all." That's the level of intellect that is the basis of the belief in evolutionary science. Evolution of the species might be a reality, but without a director, without divine design, it is impossible to happen on its own. Science today is its own religion, with tens of thousands of adherents who believe blindly in its teachings, despite the fact that there is no laboratory evidence to prove evolution has ever taken place from one species to another. Macroevolution. Microevolution, yes, because those are changes. The antibodies change. The body adjusts. That's part of the natural system of the species to defend itself, to survive. But macroevolution itself is a religion with tens of thousands of believers shaking their heads. Yes, yes, Professor Dawkins. Yes, you were right. We don't have to go to Sunday